For that big game you perhaps have all been waiting for, a battle for the throne, reigning champions up against champions of old. It's CFO up against PSG, and a chance to get the perfect head-to-head if you're a PSG fan, and a chance really for revenge as CFO.
Indeed. Now both mids go for the corrupting pot as well as the strong laning keystones, so going to be heavy trading a lot down there. The Annie as well does go for the Airy. I think we've seen a variety of different runes from the Annie support globally, so but Airy is the one picked up obviously for this laning phase. Now it's lethal tempo for sure, so it actually won't be the poke Varus. It's going to be the on hit. I suppose it could be poke with lethal tempo, right? It's pretty unlikely.
Yeah, I'm imagining it's going to be the on hit, but you certainly can just have a little bit of a mixed bargain as to really what do you want. But between that and an Azir, I mean, just that damage, you just press forward, don't you? I don't feel like you have the necessity to try and overextend yourself with the Emperor's Divide. You can just stand strong with your soldiers and just win from a DPS standpoint.
For sure, and I think the top matchup is one that we haven't really talked about, like between the players a whole lot, but I think both top laners are extremely consistent in their terms of impact on the map. And they're big parts of this team, right? A lot of the teams kind of feel like it's more about the bot lane 4v4, not too much about the top side, but you have to feel like both these top laners can be the difference makers in a game where there's so much talent just across the board.
Certainly is, and it begs the question, right? Are we going to see any solo kills? Are we going to see any kills without the influence of a jungler or, you know, a particular roam from one of our solo laners? Is the divide between these teams that big? Or are they as evenly matched as the standings have demonstrated, right? You know, so many games have gone by since these teams have last met. So what has really changed?
Yeah, I'm not too sure because I feel like the meta has changed a fair amount since the last teams met, right? Like I think last time it was, I believe, Zeri Yuumi up against Lucian Nami. And obviously, you know, bot lane's here, completely different style. Wako pretty heavily attacked in the draft. So that's potentially something that can come out here. And I also believe last time Jimmy was on, I want to say the Akali, and couldn't really find purchase in a matchup where Yubao had so much pressure over him on the Azir. But instead this time, you know, Jimmy, he's opting for something a bit longer range, something that with a bit more lane agency, if you will.
Certainly is, and you really like to see that, right? The fact that he has been finding a little bit of form in recent games gone by, the fact that he can look to try and abuse that from the very get-go here in this laning phase. And maybe enough pressure to lock Yubao in lane. That would be the biggest win, I think, for me, that if you can prevent Yubao from roaming, you've denied a lot of what makes PSG so strong.
I think you're right, and I think by picking Azir, you've almost done that already, right? Because it's a champ that has so much pressure, and I think Victor being the answer, like sure, it contests the 1v1, but can Victor really roam around the map? I don't really think so. So they've already achieved, I think, part of that win condition there. Yubao, though, no slouch in those team fights, so we'll still have that going for him. Ginger is behind the pushing bot lane of CFO here. They have the turret behind them. Yeah,
cheeky little turret to act as a ward though, isn't it? And Jinjia just buying time, waiting for the moment. Woody would have the flash stun if need be and caught upon, and I think it certainly is about to happen. Jinjia's going to poke his head into the lane here with the red buff dashing on through, but Woody not willing to pull the trigger. Doesn't want to flip the lane state as it stands. I think Wako far more interested in farming up a storm because he's down 10 at the moment.
He is, and I think Woody perhaps just not willing to trade the flash for cleanse, and I think couldn't catch up to Slay True there. But missing that gank window, I mean, it does feel kind of bad. CFO can go back to pushing, and once Gemini is back on the map, won't have anything to fear from the jungle matchup. And I mean, if you can shut down PSG's bot lane, that's another one of those keys to the matchup that we're kind of thinking about. And CFO, I mean, they're off to a good start, but a pause comes through.
Off to a good start, but into a pause, which is not a good start, is, you know, the anti-hype, if you will, right, as to getting ourselves into a position to figure out where will this game land. And I guess it sounds like we are really banging on about this point, but Wako has been in such an impressive form that the fact that he is trying something a little bit different here that won't have the same levels of impact from the very get-go, right? Like Sivir does need time, and at the best of times can certainly get outranged by some of these champions. And you're sort of starting to see it already from the laning phase, right? That the Heimerdinger and the Varus are forcing you to, you know, miss out on some of that CS. I think this would be a remarkable story if Shun was to come out the gates and not only, you know, nullify the lane, but actually just win.
Yeah, and it would also be really interesting for our kind of top three, right? Because I believe, then CFO would have lost to Impunity but beaten PSG. PSG who beat Impunity. So it would be real interesting, right, for that kind of, who beats who, perhaps a rock, paper, scissors sort of matchup at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think CFO, they've done a good job, at least with their comp, of making, I feel like, a difficult game state for Waka, right? Like, you already see in the laning phase, like you said, also having the range of the Azir up against the shorter range Sivir. And I feel like Jax is also one of those champions that is just really annoying for ADCs, right? Like, ADCs hate versing Jax.
Yeah, they certainly do. And I mean, whenever your flash is down, you're kind of just a bit like, I don't really want to entertain any ideas of a fight right now. I'd much rather just sort of sit back and wait for that to come on through. And I guess that becomes the question as to, can you find yourself in a spot where there is a position gap or a bit of team fight protection? You don't have the same luxury or the same repositioning capabilities as you do in the Zeri when you can just jump across a wall and 1v9 like last night.
Now, Dragon is actually started on spawn here from CFO, and this is something we've seen from them time and time again. I feel like if you took the average Dragon time of all teams in the league, CFO should be #1. I mean, they get the Dragon Soul so early, and it's really something common you see from them, right? CFO botlane known for their lane dominance, and convert that lane dominance immediately into doing this drag. So picked up extremely early, probably almost as soon as you can possibly get it there, right? You can't even DPS it that much faster than that. And that's really nice. I feel like if you can pick up the drag so early there, it will put a bit of pressure on kind of that Victor Sivir scaling to eventually kind of come out at that third dragon and fight. And also it means that you have ample time to kind of fix your tempo before fighting for that Herald.
Yeah, and I think also if you can find yourself still winning this bot lane in a very powerful position, if you can get enough plates, perhaps a Herald as well to try and break open more, then you can plant your your bot lane into mid. You're guaranteed that those dragons just continue to keep rolling and rolling and rolling, and the pressure becomes that much more for PSG to try and contend with. So I think early signs so far, CFO certainly have found themselves a draft advantage, and it's a case of making sure that it continues to work in their favor as level 6s start to come across.
Vamscepter picked up for Shun here, so definitely playing towards the on-hit build if it already weren't confirmed with the lethal tempo, which is an interesting choice because I actually would have thought that this would be a game for poke, right? Like you've got the sustained DPS on your team and you can just look to poke out the Victor and the Sivir, but instead saying, okay, maybe you just want extreme DPS up against this team, and having lifesteal against Victor I think does feel pretty good in those team fights. So interesting choice, and I'm excited to see kind of how it ends up paying off for them in those team fights. They'll be paying a lot of attention to the Varus. And there will be obviously the Rylai's rushed out from the Heimerdinger, which I think is actually kind of underrated, right? Just being able to apply that slow to all targets in the fight. Really high impact, even if it's not super visible to the eye. But it certainly feels annoying, especially if you're playing these 80s or these melee carries, stuff like the Wukong here or the Gnar.
Yeah, I mean, that soft CC is, as much as it doesn't seem to be, anywhere near the same impact as like a stun coming out from an Annie. You raise a really good point. It's going to be very frustrating also for the scouting potential of zoning away, like the flanking Wukong or the Gnar looking for the big angles, right? So the fact that Rylai's can come out so easily, it's going to be a nice pickup here, as Wako is going to make sure, not going to get stunned up with a nice little spell shield. Gemini waiting in the wings. He's going to get spotted out, though, if he goes into the river. Instead, may look to try and go through the lane.
Yeah, I wonder, are they just going to clear out this vision and perhaps look for something? I mean, all sums are up. Perhaps instead just thinking it's some sort of counter gank opportunity. I feel like ganking a Sivir is very tough. But it does have level 6, so perhaps could look for something and maybe even want to play for a dive. Or do they just want to secure this? And Herald is up, so if Gemini shows here, you have to feel like it will be Herald traded on the other side of the map. So Gemini, he's very committed to this.
Especially given that Jinjir is on that side of the map right now and actually might just pop his head into the Herald pit now. So a lot of time being lost here by Gemini. Jinjir obviously cannot start this one up unless his team has the ability to rotate and roam with him, which is not currently possible. Both top and mid are pushed in.
Yeah, so he's crossing. He does have that mid priority from Jimmy in here. Will he just look to start this up? I mean, has mid and top priority, also has first move from the support. I think Gemini will start this up, and this is a good look for CFO. So far, winning in the lanes, and also, if they can get this, we'll be picking up all of the early game objectives. It's definitely ticking the boxes in terms of what you want up against PSG.
Yeah, I mean, you've been a big fan of their ability to be so objectively minded, right? So strong at picking these up and putting the pressure on the team to say, well, you've got to respond, otherwise we're just getting so much gold and so much control of what the game has to offer for us. So the fact that they can get both for free, and it doesn't feel like Gemini was punished at all for spending such a long time camping bot.
It really wasn't. I don't even think there's much of a CS lead for it. And I have to feel like this Herald should go bot. I mean, if you look at the bot CS, even without the poke variant, have built up a pretty significant lead, right? Like, we don't often see the PSG bot lane fall this far behind. Perhaps looking top instead.
Yeah, certainly would be the case. Instant flash away there from Aja. Oh, he's still been hit by the stun, but it doesn't matter. Glacial Prison goes wide. Rest in trouble, and the punishment is unreal. You miss your skill shots, you will pay the price. And that's 2 kills all the way into Aja's hands.
A massive misplay there from CFO. And I think, you know, when they're going for that top dive, I think perhaps they thought that if the Herald wasn't contested at all, that Junja was just not in the area, right? They was perhaps on bot side instead. But it's just waiting in the wings wisely the whole time. And I feel like as well, wasn't particularly well executed, right? The flash stun misses, the flash sedge ult misses, and Junja in the right position. 2 kills go over to Aja on the Gnar. Feeling really, really good about that one.
Really intelligent player, though, by Jinjir, though, to read the understanding that, hey, something seems a little bit fishy. Where could the Sejuani be? And that could have been the breaking point, right? It really made sure that CFO had the perfect early game start here in the 10 minutes. A kill denied, you know, then the Herald with the plates would have been the icing on the cake. But now a 20 CS advantage with 2 kills to his name. Aj is living in paradise.
He is, but I don't think it's all doom and gloom here for CFO. They still have this big bot lane win condition, and they have a Herald that can be dropped here. And they're starting up second Dragon, you know, again, extremely early into the game. They have both mid and bot priority, and I think this one might be contested from PSG. I mean, they have Arja's TP as well. They're certainly angling for it.
Yeah, but both junglers do not have a flash there to try and make this one all work out. Yubao, oh, he's actually got the gravity field. The stun is good. And the Emperor's Divide has to be committed. Jimin was in a lot of trouble. Yubao showing great restraint here not to commit any further. And the Dragon will reset. A flash tip as it's missed. They haven't found the stun.
Wow, really nice flash there from Slay Chu to actually avoid that. Now, Jimin actually TP's back to bot, so is going to be here in time despite getting chunked out. Will actually be here ready to fight, although does not have the ulti this time. And this is very, very close. I feel like it's slightly better for CFO with the Bear and the Victor ult gone. Are they going to be able to pick it up, though?
Yeah, this one's going to become a bit of a flip. Glacial Prison, it does not matter. Jinjir secures it for his team. 1 Dragon apiece. Aja across the wall, wait for the jump across with the Mega Gnar. He finds it. Jimmy stunned and smashed.
Yeah, I think Aja just TP's in there, and I don't think anyone really noticed. I think also worth noting is that Rest, he didn't TP, but he did walk down, so there's no trade on the top side. And that's a really important Dragon for PSG, right? You kind of shut down CFO as having the drag win condition. And now 3-0 for Aja. I mean, he's really starting to run away with the game. Feeling very good about his position. I think also off that, if they can deny any of the CS under tower, you fix what was a 30 CS deficit for Wako. Oh, they're actually looking bot.
Yeah, might not be able to fix it anytime soon, though, if this kill goes across. What does PSG decide to do? Do they turn around and fight? No, Woody is gone, but Wako in a 1v3 says, look at the ricochet, look at the damage. He has a flash, but he does not have an ultimate. As we go back into a replay at that clutch Dragon fight.
He does. So the initial, I mean, the Bear was, you know, just, that was extremely close. The Chains of Corruption, though, it does miss. And then I think this standoff, it kind of favors PSG just because their top laner is the one with priority. So if they can TP in, it's always going to be better for them, right? The longer it goes. And I think CFO, they kind of fumble the secondary engage, right? They get a little bit of poke, but it doesn't really end up leading to anything. Yeah, just a little bit of damage traded. No kills actually going over, and eventually Aja wisely uses the blast cone instead of immediately eating over. Does just secure the kill. And we go back to live where Jimian has gone down to a jungle gank, I'm assuming.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, you saw in the picture-in-picture there that Jinjir's poked his head into mid lane, and with the double ult from Yubel as well. They've managed to get that kill confirmed. So, what was the bleeding question was, can you keep Yubel locked in place? But if you do force him to lane, he'll just kill you instead.
He will. I think, yeah, Jimian, I mean, He's had a fine early game, but I think now really starting to fall behind, right? Like 0-2 on the Azir, not a position you want to be in. And actually looking at the top side of CFO, they're actually, pretty significantly behind. It's really up to Shun. Is he able to kind of put this game on his shoulder? We're going to see a replay of what happened here. So Jimmy, I believe, doesn't have Flash after the previous fight, but does have the ult. Oh, wow. Okay, so he did have Flash, but Ginger just, played with the clone really well around the Azir. Very nice play out of him. Another kill goes down onto rest. I think Ginger might have just got another gank off. So finding angles over and over, really showing why he's probably the best jungler in the league.
Absolutely. And I mean, we were questioning the fact of like, what kind of gravity does it take to be drafted into a roster and said, hey, we're going to go up against the favorites in the region, and to right out the gates perform at that level, to now come back in and say, hey, a few weeks have gone by, I'm much more at home with this team, much more synergy and coordination, and everywhere I go, we're just getting kills. Now it's a 4-0 Gnar.
I think that's crazy as well, right? The fact that Gnar is 4-0 up against the extremely strong skirmishing of the Sejuani Jax. And I think CFO, they kind of did it to themselves, right? Ever since that first dive top that was, massively fumbled, Arja's really just taken that lead and run away with it.
He certainly has. Black Cleaver with the Sheen as well. So strong. I don't think anybody can contest this Gnar at this point of time. And you don't feel anywhere near as bad now that, your other lanes, in particular bot lane, was getting targeted and was getting punished, because even that has now started to stabilize. Woody in trouble, completely stunned out, and it's going to be Slay True that finds the kill with the empowered rockets.
He does go down. CFO's bot lane really trying to claw their way back into this one, trying to drag the rest of the CFO topside over the finish line. Mythics now are completed for both mid laners, and this I guess, third dragon will be spawning in just a minute here. Herald is up and available as well and hasn't really been looked at too much here. PSG, I think they might start it up knowing that the Sedge ult was committed. Should just be able to pick this one up.
You'd certainly imagine so. Obviously, a Heimerdinger ult burnt in the process too, so you'd really be looking at the likes of an Azir and a Varus to try and give you that team fight X factor. But it's not to be the case right now. The Herald is actually healing just out of leash range, so PSG maybe have bought themselves a few extra seconds that they really wish they hadn't. And Aja is certainly threatening right now in Mega and can do a fair bit of damage. This one seems like a foregone conclusion. It's a done deal. And now they can gear themselves up for that second dragon pickup in 15 seconds.
Yeah, I think both teams really going to want to contest this one. PSG, though, I think they're slightly stronger. I mean, especially if you look at RJ is extremely strong in this fight. Has the Black Cleaver as well, which is, I feel like we haven't seen that too much. Now, CFO, they're on this on spawn. I mean, they're already dealing damage to it. Will PSG instead just try and trade 2 towers mid?
Yeah.
Might be the play.
Looks to be the play, isn't it? The classic where you summon the Herald to try and bait them away from that dragon. So as quickly as CFO can rush this one down, PSG are also saying, well, let's get as many turrets as we can. Let's try and get the first one in this game. They've done a sizable amount of damage with the plates removed as well. And with everybody in the area, I mean, it's a case of let's get as many as we can.
Yeah, I think it's a big gold win for PSG. They can definitely look to kind of extend this further, especially because the first tower gold now goes over to Ubal. So feeling really good about that. Mid tower didn't end up falling, which is like kind of a saving grace there for CFO, but it's extremely low and will most likely fall soon. And you can see, just have a look at the carries here. I mean, Wako, despite having all that pressure towards him bottom, falling very far behind the lane, is only 400 gold behind Shun, which you have to feel is a really good spot to be in.
Absolutely. I mean, you'd be very happy with that, given the fact that you are playing the Sivir, that you want a bit of time under your belt, that you've managed to hit this point, and still stay fairly relevant. But the biggest thing for me, as is obvious by the scoreboard, is just how far ahead Aja is compared to this Jax. So really excited to see if it can continue in this grace, and if Aja will be the MVP.
We'll have to see. I mean, so far he's looking like he might be able to, right? He's 4-0. Extremely strong in this game. You can't count out Ginger, I feel like, in the MVP, though, right?
Oh, for sure.
Because he has been the one who's been setting up all these plays. While Aja has been kind of the beneficiary, it's been Ginger who's been there, for the counter ganks, for the proactive plays onto a lot of those mid ganks, as well as that final top gank there. So that is the Dragon picked up by CFO, but they're now down 3,000 gold, and I feel like PSG perhaps scales slightly better, although it's close. Like, I definitely don't think scaling is outright in one team's favor. But I think just in terms of kind of player scaling almost, I feel like Wako kind of known for his team fighting more, Shun known for his laning more, right? So we've kind of got out of Shun's territory and more into Wako's, which is perhaps what PSG want.
I think it's a really valid point to bring up, right? Because it's actually quite interesting as to who do you think is favoured if it were to go into scaling, if it were to go into, you know, 5-6 item territory. But right now, it's all about trying to isolate people, and Aja is just a little bit too clean with these jumps away.
Yeah, just barely got away there. I think if the Chains of Corruption had hit, probably could have been bursted down, although Wall was very tanky, and I think if CFO could pick up that massive bounty there, obviously would be a huge win, especially if it goes over to the likes of Jimmy and really needs gold at this point in the game. Yubao is about to pick up his second isolated tower. I actually want to see the difference in mid lane gold right now, because I feel like Yubao quietly is actually running away with the game almost, right? He's been left alone just to farm up a storm, has a 20 CS lead, now 2 towers. To his favor, must be massively ahead in gold, at least in that mid lane 1v1.
And he's just shown such a great deal of diversity in his approach to this game, right? We always characterize him as the roaming machine, right? The king of doing just that, but has shown that, hey, if you try and force pressure towards me, I'll find ways to take you down individually, and I'll find ways to vacuum up gold. 20 CS lead, 2 turrets isolated as you highlight, and I'd imagine certainly in a position where you're thinking, hey, this Victor also is a major threat that we need to really address.
Yeah, there are just so many threats coming through from PSG. Like, honestly, you could look at all 5 members here, and even Woody, who doesn't perhaps have the most damage right now, still has that AoE stun, right? So there's no one on the side of PSG that can be ignored. On the side of CFO, though, I mean, they're starting to fall behind, you know, on those carries. It's really just up to Shun. Can he make something happen here? Junglers will find each other.
They certainly will. His Gemini is going to collide heads here with Jinjir. And I think the big thing for me that they can at least be happy about is that they've got 2 dragons to their name, right? The next one up in a minute 30. If they can claim that one as well, and perhaps get some kills in the process, you're starting to feel a little bit more confident about their chances of getting right back into the game. I feel like the magical number that we've always talked about, that magical gap has always been 3K. Any more than that, you start to get a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I think you're right. 3K is definitely still kind of... You can deal with it. You're not really losing too much, right? Like, you're not starting to lose your jungle camps. You're not getting dived under your towers. But once it balloons beyond that, it can be very difficult. Jimmy must be sitting on a lot of gold here. Hasn't based in a very long time. Now, it'll be interesting. Can either of these second items for PSG, either the Shadow Flame on the Victor or the Navori on the Sivir, be picked up before this drag? Because I feel like you don't want to give CFO this 3rd drag win condition. At the same time, if you could buy just a couple more minutes of scaling, you know, might hit breakpoints that kind of can't be come back from for CFO.
Yeah, I mean, 2 item spikes have just been found here from Shun, and you'd be really hoping that Jimmy can also replicate that as well. Maybe get himself in a position where the Azir is able just to stand strong with the lethal tempo empowered Varus to, you know, hit down any key target. But I think with the amount of CC, the strength that these bruisers have right now on PSG, it's going to be very hard for them to be given that opportunity. So let's see what they can do, because they've managed to find themselves in the river first. PSG don't really seem too concerned. I mean, they've got 3 towers, every single adder is gone. And it's a case of, well, we know you want to fight, we know you want this dragon, but we're not going to give you that for free.
Yeah, they're on it very early in PSG this time, not willing to just go down mid, actually do want the trade. Arja has a really good position here. I think CFO, even if they pick up the dragon, might find it difficult to fight after.
Big stun goes out, Glacial Prison, it's not going to be stolen away. Jinjir is the focus, and this is Clone that got targeted, but it's not going to be him. Rest in trouble, forced to leap away. In goes the Gnar, and finds the stun onto 2. That's all you need, he's unstoppable, and for good reason too. Arja is absolutely playing out of his mind so far. Shun next on the chopping block, flashing across the Empress Divide. We will not be locked in place, we will not be CC'd. A good anti-stun for good measure, and Jinjir is, well, handsomely rewarded with a double of his own.
He certainly is, and I think after that, I wonder, do they even have the tempo to go Baron? I think they do. They have a lot of DPS, especially with the Leandry's Victor. And I mean, look at Yubao in that fight, right? So much damage dealt, really seeing the kind of the benefit of just having your Victor sitting in the side lane, you know, quietly scaling up. And when push comes to shove, he does 4,000 damage in what is such a key team fight. CFO, they pick up the dragon, but at what cost, right? You're now down 5,000 gold, even before the dragon is, or sorry, the Baron is picked up.
Yeah, 5k before, and that's going to balloon so much further ahead now that you've picked this up. You've got the localized gold of the Baron itself, and with the amount of towers they've taken, that's only going to balloon that much further. Let's run it back here, because the ult goes out in the clone. What a play from the Wukong.
Yeah, really nice there, and I think CFO, they had already kind of put themselves in a position that team fighting after was going to be difficult. Letting Arja just find that great angle on the side, I feel like it's almost too much from CFO. Like, I think prioritizing the Dragon too highly, right? You can't just get the Dragon at the cost of losing the game, right? Of losing the entire team fight and the Baron as well. And that's kind of the hyperfixation that can come with trying to stack up those Dragons. And, you know, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Sometimes CFO, they get their soul extremely early in the game. And sometimes instead they, you know, have that extremely bad team fight off of it.
Yeah, and that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, it feels like now, because you found yourself in a position where perhaps there was an avenue back in, perhaps a point of power that you can be quietly confident about achieving, but you've just lost so much to try and get to that point in this game. And with PSG having prepped these waves ever so well, they are taking down as much as they can and making sure that 5K soon becomes 10.
I think it will. I mean, PSG are ahead enough that they might even be able to look for inhibs here. There is a lot of wave clear from this Azir, but the Azir is 0-3, right? It's definitely not the strongest at this point in the game, and I think PSG could find a way to push off. They've managed to take the bot lane tier 2. Perhaps can start to work on the mid lane as well. They have 5 members around, so actually ignoring the top at the moment. TFO, they kind of look like they're posturing for a fight. Perhaps want to try get some sort of engage before the Baron really starts to have effect, but I don't think they're going to be able to find it.
No, it just felt like a massive contest for the red buff of all things, didn't it, right? So red buff confirmed, smited away there by Gemini, but it doesn't stop the fact that, hey, there is still a Baron for another full 60 seconds. And this mid-tier 2 is the next to fall on down. Maybe Rest can find a flanking angle. Note, the ult goes out from Victor and realizes, might not be a good idea after all. So as good as their wave clear is, they will have to take some losses.
Another tier 2 knocked down. It looks like PSG can tend to kind of play this a bit slowly, right? They don't feel the need to end the game in any kind of immediate fashion. Have a minute 35 though on a Dragon that you have to say PSG are massively advantaged at, you know, have a massive gold lead. At the same time though, they really need to stop CFO from getting it. I feel like a Dragon Soul, if CFO pick it up with this game, it's not game winning, right? Like, they're far enough behind that it will still be close, but it is something that as PSG, you really don't want to give over.
No, you certainly don't, right? You want to make sure that you've got every single buff under your belt and have as much team fight strength as you can. I think at this point, right, PSG will have a TP advantage. A small window in which they can continue to try and utilize this Baron buff as it does now finally expire. Maybe now is a chance to try and exploit Rest even further. He's completely isolated from his team. His flash is not up. He can leap towards, but 3 members are soon to be here. Perhaps a stun from the Tibbers comes on through. Shrellis to start things off. Just a passive stun is what they'll find. Make it a 4v1 and a Gnar stun for good measure too. And now the Jax is 0-4 and your solo lanes are 0-7.
It's a rough spot to be in, and definitely not what you'd expect from Rest, right? Like, I feel like Rest can, as we were saying at the start of the game, consistently finds really good impact for his team, but after that very early death, really just hasn't found a way back in, and will now be dead for this 4th Dragon, so I have to feel like there will be no contest coming in from CFO. Most likely will just be picked up here by PSG. They have so much control over this area, and with Rest dead as well, I think they're just going to have to give it over.
I think so, and this is so crazy to me, right? Because this is that battle between 1st and 2nd place right now, and you start to ask, really, is the divide between these 2 mega teams that big?
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because I feel like Impunity actually put up a much better performance versus PSG, to the point where PSG perhaps shouldn't have won that game against Impunity, but here, really kind of cementing their place back on top. And as well, like, you can't help but think Impunity beat CFO. Are we perhaps seeing, you know, it's hard to say off just 2 games, right? But are we perhaps seeing Impunity moving more towards that title contender rather than CFO? I still feel like probably not, but it's certainly something to think about.
Yeah, it's certainly hard to try and justify some, you know, abstract conversation points like this, especially in a best-of-1 format, right? But if PSG were to win, they'd create a 2-game buffer between their opposition in CFO. Certainly a bit of daylight between that and the rest of the league as well. And you can certainly feel pretty comfortable about your chances of a top 2 finish for that instant bye going into the playoffs. Let's see what CFO can do, though, from behind, because they are staring down the barrel of an 8k gold deficit. They need some kills, they need some bounties, be it kills from champions or from objectives themselves, and perhaps they'll get that opportunity with the 2nd Baron spawning in less than 60 seconds.
Yeah, it's 60 seconds until it's all going to come to fruition here. I think both teams can do Baron so fast, and PSG, you have to feel like, can just start it up straight away. And Wako, you know, I feel like had a rough go of it in the early game, but the thing is, the champs that are meant to outrange him or make his game difficult just aren't strong, right? The Azir is so weak. Rest as well is sitting at 0-4. So the stuff that would make the Sivir pick kind of, you know, difficult to have impact, they're really just not strong enough. And now 18 seconds on this Baron. I think PSG, you can kind of just push in your waves. Look to start it straight away. If you can get Arja in a flank position, it's going to be so hard for CFO to contest.
Yeah, and he's so strong now, is Arja, right? 3 completed items with the Force of Nature as well as the stopwatch too. Gemini, obviously very slippery, can just dodge out of that harass that PSG were throwing it towards him. And they've done enough, right, to try and control the vision, control the space, more so than anything to make sure that, hey, you have to face check us, and you have to face check us blind to see if we're doing Baron.
Wako is engaged on by Rest.
Yeah, this is huge right now. On the hunt has to be popped. Still looking for the kill. Flash away, turn around. Rest in trouble now. Overcommitted himself because he's surrounded by multiple red bodies. Leaps to safety. And the rest of his team certainly do rally around him to protect and make sure that nobody will fall on down. And the bait for the Baron proves to be costly.
Yeah, I think actually big win there for CFO. Rest, you know, finding something in this game. He gets both sums out of Wako and chunks him low enough that he can't actually contribute to the fight at all. So yeah, massive win there from CFO. They buy themselves at least a little bit of time for PSG perhaps to make another mistake again. And I think what's key is perhaps punishing the fact that Wako now has no sums.
Certainly, and it's to be matched by both AD carries now. They're very vulnerable. They are that on-hit ability, right? So these bruises have a big role to play now, despite one being 0-4, the other being 5-0, right? They can certainly lock down even if their score is not reflective of being ever too strong. Good play there by Jinjia, right, to try and smite steal that scuttler away, so they will have guaranteed vision at least on that Baron, despite CFO being first to redeploy back there to make sure it is theirs. But 30 minutes into this game now, and if the Baron isn't be rushed anytime soon, it's a chance for them to, you know, cool their heads to maybe reevaluate. Okay, Soul Point is what we put all our eggs into the basket for. We have to guarantee that surely.
Yeah, I think CFO, they're going to have to find some way to contest. If they can find another pick like that, potentially have the opportunity to look towards that Dragon. Whether or not that'll be enough to kind of tip the game into their favor, that's kind of yet to be seen, but it'll be a start. The CFO, I wonder if PSG will instead just like push them out. Perhaps look up to just start this Baron, right? Try and force them away from the Soul nice and early. Could even see an engage on the mid wave here. It's getting really dicey. Everyone's kind of looking for something but can't quite find it yet. 5v5, an actual ARAM on the mid wave. And RJ, he's almost got the Narbar already. Waiting in the wings.
Things to look out for. Yubao no flash, Wako no flash either. Jimmy does have the potential to outplay with a massive Emperor's Divide with the flash engage himself. You're always going to be concerned about where that Mega Bar is. And where the Nara is at any given moment. It's been so impactful, flanking from angles, completely unheard of.
And Woody's gone for the reset, so won't be on the map in time, but will be able to just fill up all his wards again. And PSG, I think you want to avoid a trade here. You're strong enough that you should be able to get both. You can just kind of chase CFO around, eventually force them to commit to something, and that's when you make your move. They're kind of corralling CFO here. Dragon's up in just 8 more seconds.
Both teams testing the waters. Gemini flings at the Glacial Prison, hits nothing. Wako pops the Nitrous and just zooms into action. Arja has bounced into life. Cyclone is huge onto 4 members, but they can't find the kill. The carries can't follow up their bruises, but they've done enough damage to force CFO back to the fountain, and surely now PSG can rush towards at least a Dragon and steal that away.
They can, but I think they need to be careful. Don't commit too many members to this, just in case there is some sort of Baron trade coming out. Looks like they commit the bare minimum. Keep the rest of the members on that mid wave, so really nice macro here. Oh, actually perhaps bringing the members away. Or is Arja going to be the one to solo that? I mean, Gemini is actually in the area. This is risky. They're walking away from it.
This is really, really risky. Jinjia needs to sprint on down right now and say this is going to be a smite fight, much like it was before. Gemini dashes across the wall again. No blast code, no chance to secure it. 6 dragons, and it's Soul Point for both.
It is. Next Dragon fight really is going to be the decider, and I think PSG have to feel so much better about it. Up 8,000 gold, and did try and greed a bit more there to kind of, you know, get both. And was kind of close, I think, to Gemini getting in there and able to steal it, but was not quite able to. And another thing I want to bring up here is that Yubal's actually been able to complete the Rabadons, whereas Jimmy's still working on the Void Staff. And the Void Staff kind of has to come in through here. But hold that thought. Baron has been started up by CFO. It's actually getting pretty low.
Yeah, a lot of damage, especially with the on-hit Varus right now. Chain of Corruption goes out for a lot, but the Glacial Prison as well. When Junjie jumps in and realizes it's already gone, a massive objective bounty, gold in the pockets that CFO so desperately need. But can they disengage? Will they fall victim to the same fate they felt when they went for the dragon and lost all their lives in the process? 2 have been removed, their jungler and their support, and that's probably your best case scenario, unless Rest is in trouble as well. The empowered Baron recall is not enough to get him home. But he's taking the fight to Aja. But it's a 1v3, and it's a little bit too much CC unless he can get Woody, and he doesn't get it.
Oh, so
wow.
Close. Yeah, wow. Okay, so it does end up being Baron on 2 members here for CFO. And importantly, taking it off the map means that you have this little buffer period where PSG can't do a whole lot, at least into all this Baron wave clear. And one thing I want to quickly come back to is just the mid lane itemization difference. Oh my god, look at the top laners. They both had so much impact in that fight. But the mid lane, I feel like Jimmy and forced to go Void. You kind of have to because there's just so much magic resist coming through. But it also means you have so much less AP than Yubao, just itemized full Rabadons. But let's look at this fight. The Baron goes down really early, but then PSG, they find the angle in. I feel like the engage wasn't the best. Woody kind of went in just a bit too early, and then there wasn't any follow-up. But ultimately, CFO, they kind of scatter in all directions just to try get as many Barons as they can out of here. And they managed to get 2 out, which is better than none.
I think it still remains on the best players possible, right? You still got it on Jimin as well as Shun, which is all you can ask for. Slay True going to get soloed out by the Wukong, and right in front of Gemini. He can't help.
He really can't, and this is what we always say, Ginger ends up as that DPS threat, right? Here he is with 4 kills, just solo killing people left and right. And can they get anything off that? I'm not too sure. I feel like Baron's still up here for a minute on Jimin and Shun. Should be able to hold the base. But still looking for picks.
And it's a Baron that really is a denial more than anything, right? They've been unable to utilize the carries that have it to actually siege and push. They're just defending as best they can. And I go back to the point before for Rest. He's struggling so much. 0-5. He just really wanted at least 1 kill.
He's been close a few times, and I feel like he's actually still managed to find some pretty big impact in this game. You can't imagine how different the game might have been if that top dive had worked out. You know, very early on, could actually have the top lane scores, you know, easily reversed at this point, just from that single play. GA is now picked up for Arja and probably will not be dying this game.
Maybe staring down the barrel of a perfect game individually.
Yeah, now 135 on the Baron. This is sole point for both teams. And PSG, they're so much stronger at this point. They have the control. They have all the items they need. CFO, can they somehow upset PSG and steal this Baron away? I feel like it's almost impossible. PSG, they have so much control over this area already. Getting set up nice and early. They know how important this dragon is for both teams.
And it's frustrating for CFO, right? They've got the TP advantages on 2 members right now. Both Aja and Yubao do not, but they can't afford to split push. They're forced to group up as 5. They look at Aja and say, hey, 1v3, we're not interested. You've got a GA. You're far too tanky, and it would be a waste of time. So the mid ARAM continues.
It does. 45 more seconds here. Both teams trying to find something before the fight starts. Soft engage comes out, but it's not committed to. Yeah, and I think... Ooh, Rest, okay, he's going to take some chunk on the side. Is forced to counter-strike and leap strike, or leap strike. Leap away.
Shredders was actually used there as they spotted out Rest, considering whether or not that was a pick target they could go for. Look at Slay True, waiting right now with the bouncing bomb, finds out 1. Glacial Prison is huge, but it doesn't matter because the stasis wants to get on Jinjia. 2-man ult, Emperor's Divide, shove back the clone, that's not who you want! And the Slay True dies. Wako's found his kill, Rest is now 0-6, double for the Sivir, bursting into life, getting resets, getting kills, getting excited about it. Gemini and a Dream, dead and shoved up against the wall. It's a clean 5-0 ace, and it should be PSG marching to victory.
They will, and a much more one-sided affair than we perhaps would have thought. 19-2 is the kills in the end, at more than a 10,000 gold lead for PSG.
Same roster and ultimately the same result here, Shock. They've shown that they are just a cut above the rest. Ever too good. 12k gold lead and a game that really never looked out of their hands.
It didn't, and I think, you know, for the first 10 minutes, it was perhaps slightly sketchy. I think out of their hands, you know, we wouldn't go that far, but I think CFO were actually doing a pretty good job, right? They were getting those objectives. They got both the Dragon and the Herald. They had that 30 CS lead in bot, but it all started to unravel with that, you know, initial dive on top side, which Junja, you know, counter ganked so well, and from there, I feel like CFO never really managed to recover. And I mean, also very different way for how they normally win, right? Like Arjun normally has a lot of pressure, but he's never normally that primary carry. That title is kind of, you know, normally held by Junja or Yuba or Wako. But this game, I feel like, you know, Wako actually kind of got to take a back seat and say, hey, I've already done the hard work. It's up to you guys now. And they certainly deliver.
They certainly did. In the case of, you know, you've targeted the 80 carry champ pool in the draft and you forced me onto the Sivir. But have you forgotten how star-studded the rest of my roster is? And you've just let them have an absolute field day here on the Rift. And I find it an interesting discussion now for the MVP because, yes, I think you can look at this at face value and say, oh, Aja, perfect game is Gnar? Has to be. When do you ever see a top laner pop off like such? But I think Junjie might just squeeze in ahead because he empowered and enabled and really got everything done.
Yeah, I think it has to be one of the top jungle. There could maybe be an argument for Yuba in some of the later team fights, but I feel like he was kind of the one who, you know, helped solidify the win, but wasn't the one who kicked it off. And one thing I want to quickly bring up is